All right. So hopefully you were able to get a grasp on what the difference between the delegated, enumerated, expressed, and the implied powers are. What we're going to do is we're going to move forward with this lecture and looking at what we refer to as the inherent powers. Now, these are the ones that I find, students struggle with the most because you can't actually find them anywhere. These are, and I'm going to give you the definition and I'm going to go through it, slowly for you because I think this is important. So if I look at my, first of all, before I give you the definition, if I look at my graphic organizer, I said the delegated express powers are those that are written specifically in the Constitution. Anytime Congress or the president expands on the powers that are listed for them in the Constitution, they are exercising an implied power. So the example we used in the last lecture is Congress has the power to coin money. That is a delegated power. But when they decide to make a $5 bill, or if they would decide, after all this coronavirus stuff is done, they want to get rid of the penny for whatever reason, they have that power too. It's not stated in the Constitution that they can get rid of the penny, but because they have the delegated power to coin money, they have control over the currency. So we kind of got an idea of what these are. This is where things get confusing, is when we have these powers, and I put it in the shape of an arrow pointing at the federal government. Inherent powers are defined as powers that Congress and the president have, and the reason they have them is because they are Congress and the president. Okay, so that may just make no sense to you. Okay, so if I look at it and say powers of the government, because they are the government, that might even be more confusing. But that is the definition of inherent powers. Powers that the federal government has because they are the federal government. So, examples. Things that our federal government does or controls or has oversight to that the framers never imagined. And if the federal government didn't control these issues, it would be chaos in this country because we wouldn't know from state to state what the rules were. Now I'm going to flip over to two videos. I'm just going to show parts of these two videos, and then I'm going to come back and see if you can explain to me or have some idea. Well, you can't explain to me, I'm in a video, duh. But that you have an understanding that you're not going to find these things in the Constitution. But the federal government controls these areas because if they didn't, it would be a mess from state to state. So the first thing I want is this particular video. I'm hoping that this is still working. Okay, here we go. Now I see the box. All right, so here we go.
Back in the golden years of air travel, flying was a glamorous mode of transportation reserved for well-heeled holidaymakers and international business jet-setters. A trip to the airport was a holiday in itself. Nowadays, as the cost of flying has dropped considerably and security levels have mutated beyond imagination, we find ourselves passing through what amounts to a tactical Cold War zone rather than a simple transit hub. Everyone is a potential suspect and everyone is in danger, or so they like to have us think. But just who are these agents luring around and pulling God-fearing American folks aside? And what exactly do they want? That's what we'll find out in today's episode of the Infographic Show. What are the TSA agents looking for at airports? So first up, just what is and who are the TSA? Well, the Transportation Security Administration is an agency of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security that has authority over the traveling public within the United States borders. The agency was created following the aftermath of 9/11. The first administrator, John McGaugh, was nominated by President Bush on December 10, 2001. Agency proponents, such as Transportation Secretary Norman Mineta, argued that only a single federal agency would be in a position to protect air travel. From February to December 2002, 1.7 million applicants for 55,000 TSA positions were processed. Prior to the formation of the TSA, private security firms managed air travel security. The TSA uses a combination of well-ironed techniques using trained technicians who are skilled in communications, customer service, and document fraud. They use a range of equipment including metal detectors, scanners, closed-circuit TV, X-ray machines, and chemical sensory devices. To make sure you get from point A to point B without any major delay, you should avoid drawing attention to yourself while in transit. But what exactly is TSA actually looking for? Number 1, guns. Never talk about weapons. Even a friendly joke overheard by an officer could have you pulled to one side and thoroughly searched. If you like to jibber-jabber about guns or gun laws, then an airport is not the place to do it. Even browsing through a copy of popular US publication Guns and Ammo may alert suspicion. Number 2, coffee. Avoid taking coffee with you as a souvenir. Coffee beans are routinely used by drug smugglers to overpower the smell of the illegal drugs they have stashed alongside it. So if you've been on vacation to Costa Rica and you're looking to bring back a jar of Monte Cristal, consider mailing it back to yourself rather than slipping it into your carry-on luggage. Number 3, large amounts of cash. This is a red flag for the TSA. It's always a smart move to take only what you need for transit through airports. With technology as it is nowadays, you should never be too far away from an ATM machine. The folks who carry large wads of cash could well be connected with shady commerce, and the TSA are alert to those types. Number 4, medicines without prescription. Laws on drugs and medicine differ from state to state, so to avoid any confusion, make sure all medicines are accompanied by an RX prescription. Also, make sure that your prescriptions at your point of departure are legal at your destination. Number 5, stressed passengers. Don't let your stress levels show. We know it's difficult when you've missed that connecting flight and the next one is in 7 hours, but try not to let your anger show. Agents are trained to pick up on suspect behavior, and that includes edgy and stressed-looking passengers muttering obscenities under their breath. Number 6, line jumpers. In a hurry? Well, wait your turn. Cutting the line at the airport is not only impolite, it may also result in you being singled out as a potential security threat.
Alright, so you got a little bit better idea. Airport security is inherent. Okay, if we allowed our states to all decide how they're going to run their airports and what security measures they would have to go through, or passengers would, it would be chaos. And so the federal government takes that power and they regulate all air traffic because it keeps it consistent. It is not in the Constitution. There's not a thing in the Constitution that talks about any type of infrastructure. So when Eisenhower authorized and the creation of the interstate system, he did so through an inherent power. Here's another one. Let me see if I can get this to, it's being silly. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure that this is available. Here's another one.
Absolutely looking at breaking up the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. President Trump made those comments after a federal district court judge blocked his order withholding funding from sanctuary cities. Joining me now to discuss the Trump administration's efforts to secure our borders and to enforce immigration laws is Brandon Judd. He's the president of the National Border Patrol Council. Brandon, good to have you with us. And how does it feel to have a president who cares about sovereignty, the importance of that border, and stopping drugs and smuggling across that border?
Border Patrol agents are very happy at this moment. We finally have a president who has the political will to do what's necessary to secure the border, and we're ecstatic to get behind him.
And And I have to start with Senator Cruz here. I mean, I'm just so impressed that he came up with the idea of the El Chapo legislation to take the forfeited assets of a drug cartel kingpin and turn them over to the cost of building that wall. What do you think of, first, the wall, and secondly, Senator Cruz's idea?
Well, the wall is going to get built. It's like President Trump said, the wall, having worked in the busiest sector in the entire history of the Border Patrol, I can tell you that before fences were built, it was out of control. When we started to build fences, we were able to get more semblance of control because we got to dictate where illegal immigration would take place, which made us much more effective. So a wall is absolutely necessary, a wall in strategic locations.
Can I ask you this? As I listened to you say that, which wasn't the question I asked, but as I listened to your answer, does it just boggle your mind that you have to explain to people that a wall on the border will stop the majority of methamphetamines, heroin, cocaine, and marijuana that enter this country every year? That heroin leading to 52,000 overdose deaths in 2015 alone. I mean, does that boggle your mind? You have to explain that to people?
It's upsetting. It more than just boggles my mind, because if whether you're left, right, or in the middle, if you want border security, you have to give us the resources that are necessary to allow us to secure the border. And a wall is one of those resources that's going to help us. To get back to your earlier question about Senator Cruz, he is a senator that is very intelligent and conscientious. And for him to come up with that idea, any money that is made through criminal enterprise is subject to government forfeiture. And his idea to use that money to build the wall is an amazing idea, and is something that I don't know how anybody could say is illegal, and why not use the money to build the wall that way?
Okay. So if I go back and I look again at what is this? We have nothing in our document in the Constitution that specifically says Congress or the president are going to protect the borders. Yes, we have a national military, but making a decision to build a device that will stop the movement over a border, that's not in the Constitution. And if we allowed the individual states to make decisions on who got across the border into their state, it's essentially saying we're giving the states the ability to control immigration. And so the federal government steps in, they take control over certain areas that are not in the Constitution that need to be controlled by a single government unit, and the federal government controls certain areas of our lives that nowhere does it say they have this power, but they assume this power because they are the federal government. And when we start looking at, and I start giving you some examples of different powers, this one does become a challenge, and we have to ask ourselves, is the thing the government's doing, is it expanding off of something that's in the Constitution? If it is, that's an implied power. If it is a power that we can't find anything in the document that's they're doing or that gives them the right to do this, then we're actually dealing with an inherent power. So those are some big differences. Now, these are all powers of our federal government. The president has delegated enumerated express powers. He is the commander-in-chief. He has the responsibility to faithfully execute the laws. The implied powers, making the powers that are delegated and outlined in the Constitution applicable. And then we have the federal power called inherent powers, which are powers the federal government holds because it is the federal government. So those are three that deal with the federal system. In the next video, we're going to talk about the reserved powers of the federal government. I'm hoping this is clicking in there so that we can talk about now powers that belong to the federal government, and then there are powers that belong to the states. So we'll get to those next. Doodle doodles.